So, where were you when you heard about 9/11 attacks?
I was at the trading desk at HBK,
In New York?
no, in Dallas,
Okay.
at the Crescent.
What were you doing there? Do you
Uh,
remember?
well, I was at work. We were watching, getting ready for the markets to open, and I remember seeing the first plane crash, or hearing of the first plane crashing, and that made lots of news. And then I remember seeing the second plane hit the World Trade Center in real time, and thinking this is not a coincidence.
Yeah. Okay. What do you remember about the video footage in the media covering that day? Or in the media coverage that day, sorry.
I think at the time we had um, I remember looking at it and thinking this is a very strange occurrence, and all of us trying to figure out what would happen next.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to figure out if the markets would open, what would happen to our positions, um, but also we had people in our New York offices, and we were concerned about them, about their health and safety. And then, we were concerned. We had a couple of people who were up there from New York who wanted to come back here,
Mm-hmm.
and we were concerned about how they could get back to Dallas,
Yeah.
which wound up taking them a long time.
Yeah. How would it have it affected your position?
Position on what?
You just said at one point you said that you were wondering if it was going to close the markets, if it was going to affect your positions.
Oh, that's just the we had, it was all public market positions, so long positions and short positions, and trying to figure out whether we'd make money, lose money.
Mm-hmm.
Much more of just a monetary basis than anything else, but it was definitely a strange occurrence.
Yeah. So what kind of emotional responses did the attacks trigger in you?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think I'm a terribly emotional person.
Yeah.
Um, I would say
Do you remember how it
emotional
affected Mom?
responses were relatively limited.
Was Mom any different?
What?
Was Mom any different?
Mom was shocked, and she was bothered that somebody would choose to kill, I forget how many,
2,998.
civilians. What?
2,998.
Across
Yeah.
across the World Trade Center and the Pentagon?
Yeah.
I would have thought it was maybe 5,000 or 6,000, but
I might not be including the Pentagon. I'm not completely sure, but
she was pretty shocked that somebody would choose. There was a little bit of disbelief around it. There were lots of stories. I had a friend who was fishing in Alaska. He and a fishing guide had gone into the backcountry, and they were due to be picked up on September 12th.
Mm-hmm. Never happened.
Well, they showed up on September 12th at the pickup spot, and the plane didn't come.
Yeah.
And so they figured, well, maybe there's weather, and so they showed up the next day. No plane, no plane, no plane. 7 days later, so I think all the flights were grounded for about 7 days.
Yeah.
But 7 days later, the pilot came in, and they said, "Where the hell have you been?" And the pilot said, well, you're not going to believe this, but all the flights in the United States have been grounded for the last week. And they thought he'd just been drinking heavily.
Wow.
But there are lots of stories like that. I had another friend who actually spent a week in Western Canada because he was on a flight from New York to Tokyo, and they got grounded on their way there, and they had to spend a week in nowhere,
Canada,
northwestern Canada. Well, I would, from an emotional standpoint, was less of we need to offer a reaction. It was more of what happened. What happened, who did it, and what's the appropriate response?
Yeah, so kind of related to that. So yeah, what were your thoughts on how we should have responded and how we did, I guess?
Well, we wound up responding by invading Iraq.
Yeah. Did you agree with that?
I think that the range of responses depends on what your goal is. Mm-hmm. And there were a multiplicity of possible responses.
Do you agree with when that happened?
At the end of the day, no. I agreed with it at the time. Mm-hmm. I actually think the response should have been much harsher and much more violent than the one that took place. From a dispassionate standpoint and from a self-centered standpoint, the appropriate response would have been to take advantage of the situation to gain control of natural resources in the Middle East. I think we started down that path and then we chose not to actually follow through. Mm-hmm. That would have also been a very controversial path to follow. If the intended response was deterrence of future attacks on similar lines, I don't personally, I don't believe that our response in terms of invading Iraq was particularly oriented at deterrence. Mm-hmm. I think that our response was somewhat oriented at, okay, how do we use this to our advantage? But then I think our president became hamstrung politically and was unable to use it to our advantage. Mm-hmm. If it was deterrence, I think it could have been easily solved with much less cost in terms of American lives or overall lives, but it would have been deterrence in a much less moral
definitely
manner.
Yeah, I understand that.
But I think it's a very challenging issue. Mm-hmm. There was just to not relate it to 9/11, but to relate it to an earlier crisis. In the 1980s, in Lebanon, some of the local factions discovered that kidnapping was a particularly attractive option in terms of delivering resources to them, and they kidnapped the head of the CIA in Lebanon, I believe specifically in Beirut. Uh-huh. And they held him for, I believe, about 2 years, and they got lots of press, and they wound up getting significant resources out of it at the end of the day. And as a matter of fact, it went so well that they followed that by kidnapping the head of the KGB in Beirut. And the Kremlin's response to that was significantly different from that of the United States. The United States knew who had kidnapped the head of the CIA in Beirut. And then the KGB knew who had done it. And the KGB's response was to go and gather all of the family members of the top 3 guys that they knew who were involved, and they killed the grandfather, put his head in a box, and delivered it to the kidnappers, and said the head of the KGB needs to be back at the Russian embassy by noon.
Wow.
Or, and there was a picture of the rest of them, and get the heads of one of these every hour until that happens. And the head of the KGB was back at the head of the Russian embassy in 30 minutes.
Not surprised. I mean, it's morally wrong, of course, but it's effective.
Yeah.
And so then last question. How have your views, thoughts, and remembrances of 9/11 changed over the years, if at all?
Very little as it occurs to, as it pertains to the actual event. It mostly just serves as a reminder to me that the world at large is a place that doesn't necessarily follow rule of law. And the United States is very much part of that. But so are all the other actors. And I find it troubling that we wish, that there are people who wish to view it in the myopic point of view that, well, everyone should follow our laws.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different systems of laws, and that's just a reality. And when I think of 9/11, it is nothing but a reminder of that. We saw it again today when Brunei, a teeny little country, decided to start following Sharia law, and it was decried in the press. But it is. And I find, it's just a reminder that the world is a multifaceted place with lots of different viewpoints and lots of different systems and morals.
Kind of varies on where you go.
The what?
It definitely varies on where you are.
Very much so.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Dad.
Okay. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful.